There's a reason it's the defense and industrial strategy,
Yeah.
because it's so interlocked with supply chains, with how we're going to grow our industry and innovation. AI is also a big thing, and we need minerals to be able to power that. But I want to point to something specifically. So Canada has 10 of the 12 minerals NATO needs, yet our mining to manufacturing pipeline is broken. How do you think we ensure that Canadian mined minerals are actually processed in Canada rather than being shipped to China and sold back to us as components?
A few years ago, the government launched a critical mineral strategy, which I believe kind of flew under the radar until recently, where people realized that we were so rich in critical mineral. How do we make sure that we're no longer just extracting critical mineral, but how do we make sure that we have a fully integrated supply chain? There's two components, I think, to that. First, it's developing export markets. Those critical minerals are important to Canada, but they're also important to the world. As we are developing electrification, the batteries, the world needs those critical minerals. So we need to be able to identify countries and industry that we can sell those critical minerals to. And secondly, it's to provide resources, subsidies, and funding to develop that supply chain here. Creating those factories that then process the mineral are extremely expensive. And so you need to kind of give a little push to the industry. And also, I think a third aspect of it, I said two, I'll say three. The third aspect of it is, how do you take the mineral from the mine to the ports and to those factories that then are going to refine and transform those raw material? Mines are often very remote, so they need thousands, if not hundreds of kilometers of road. They need transmission line, you'll need power. And so you need that funding to then create those infrastructure. A mining company, even if the mine itself is profitable, is not going to be able to create all of that infrastructure on its own. So they need the government support. And I think the industry was very happy to see that first and last mile fund that was announced that aimed at supporting those types of infrastructure that allows us to connect the mine to the rest of the ecosystem.
I wasn't sure if you wanted to go there, so I'm glad you brought that up. But yeah, everyone talks about that last mile in delivery, and you painted it very nicely of that picture of literally the roads. And I mean, the jobs that that's going to create of someone physically exporting and moving those products and, you know, putting them on shipping containers or in different facilities. But yeah, let's talk about the first mile fund. And as I mentioned, everyone talks about the last mile in delivery, but in the north, it's the first mile. Getting that rock out of the ground, that's really the hardest part. Why do you think it's taken until 2026 for Canada to realize that a critical mineral strategy is worthless without a paved way to the north?
That's a very good question. I think the government realized that it needed those critical minerals years ago, but I think the global context has shifted enough that now it's just front and center in terms of the conversation that people are having. I think we're also realizing that if we are not fully utilizing the resources that we have, we are overly reliant on foreign supply chain, and we are at the mercy of geopolitical tension and of rupture in those international supply chains. So I think we're slowly realizing that we have everything we need in Canada. We just need the political will and the resources to really take advantage of that.
I think an interesting point is there definitely is this sense of urgency, and it's very unfortunate that these things weren't dealt with earlier, because we've seen back in 2022 that Canada's northern premiers were waving the flag saying we need help, being very vocal to the federal government, and there wasn't that action being done. Where do you think Canada can either lead or step up where they need to?
I think we've talked a lot about that lately in Canada, is like the need for Canada to step up, right?
Yeah.
And then when others are stepping down, it is our duty to then step up. I think when it comes to critical mineral, the advantages that our country has is that we have just so many of them, right? So we have this ability of becoming a critical mineral superpower, only though if we are able to fully capitalize on a fully integrated supply chain. And then we're able to extract the mineral, we're able to transform the mineral, we're able to then ship the mineral. There are very few ports in Canada who are deep sea open all year long. So how do we also invest in port infrastructure, in rail infrastructure, to then be able to then ship those minerals abroad? So we have the capacity. I think we need to understand that our long-term project, and for us not to be late at the game, we need to start investing now.
Yes, and what I feel like I'm hearing from you as well is like, it needs to be, and I feel like the Trudeau government was afraid of this, to be honest. Both of us worked in it, but I had felt that there was this distance from private and public partnership, right?
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, industry can't just fund it themselves. They need government or some sort of, I don't even want to say the word support, but I think there needs to be that alliance, that certainty that this project is going to get done. And it didn't feel like, again, this is, I think, a criticism of the Trudeau government. There was a lot of announcements and not the actual implementation strategy. So that to say, where do you think we're sitting now? Like, are you hopeful? Do you feel like maybe the Carney government is more open to that private-public partnership?
I think they are. And I think what we're seeing with the Carney government is that there's an openness in working with the private sector as partner, while I feel on the Trudeau government, the focus was just elsewhere, right? It was also a very different time. And I think the focus was just more on social policy, which are very important, but less, I feel, on the economic side. While I think the Carney government has been very clear by launching the defense strategy, by creating the major project office, by creating the defense agencies, by signing all of those trade deals, they're clearly indicating that they are here to support business, Canadian businesses.
It's still early. It's technically a year on the calendar, but I think it's only something like 70 or 90 sitting days, something like that.
So I think, like you said, very early, and I think we'll have to see the implementation of those policies. But I think so far, like I said, cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that I'm seeing is that there's a clear will to make sure that industry are listened to and that their voices and their perspectives are understood and taken in consideration when it comes to shaping policies.
Yeah.
And I think we often forget, right, that especially in the mining sector, those are very well paid jobs, often also unionized jobs. And then for some community, it's the livelihood, the lifeline of a certain community. So ensuring that, once again, the example of the mining sector is supported in a way that create tangible return for Canada and for the community is beneficial for the entire country.
Yes, there is that ripple effect.
Yeah.
Like it's the ripple effect or the trickle down economics of it. You invest in one place and everything else can thrive.
Can grow.
And grow. And I mean, we've seen that historically in Canada, the Canadian Pacific Railroad building that out.
Nation building project.
Yeah. So it's interesting that we're definitely going back to this mentality in this very turbulent time. But I think, unfortunately, in the day and age we're in, we want that instant gratification, and government doesn't work that way. So managing those expectations is really, I think, interesting, especially not only from working in government, but also seeing it from the outside, right?
Yeah. I think it's, and like you said, managing expectation is a key word. Having been in government, we also know how the sausage is made. So you know that things have to be approved by an interdepartmental committee, and then it has to be written into a memorandum that then goes into another committee that then is approved by a minister. So it's also kind of providing that context to some of the clients who are like, why is it taking so long? Well, let me walk you through the approval process.
Yeah, this is the step-by-step.
The step-by-step. And here's where we are currently in the process. So
committee is such an unsexy topic. But that's where like everything actually gets done, because on social media we more or less see you get the clips, right? Of question period and sometimes of committee, but that's where like the sausage is made.
Yeah, and it's also where industry and parliamentarian have an opportunity to really have a discussion.
Yeah.
That back and forth that you have when you come to a committee and you present your case and you answer questions. I think we are underestimating this element. It's a crucial part of our democracy, right?
You took the words right out of my mouth. It is such a crucial part of the democracy because each party will meet individually with the stakeholder. But having them at committee, and like you said, that bridge of letting them speak to all the parties in that one moment is so critical, because you're speaking to everybody. We're all absorbing the same information. Yes, you're going to respond or ask questions on maybe a little more of what your values or your parties align with or your priorities, but it gives that opportunity to have that dialogue.
And it also gives an opportunity for parliamentarians to bounce back on each other's idea. When you meet them individually, they come with their sets of questions, they have their views and ideas and perspective on whatever issue you're dealing with. But then when you're putting all of those people together and you hear different types of questions, different angle people are coming at, it also forces them to bounce back on each other and be like, well, you said that. I have a question based on what you just said. And like, I would like to hear you answer the question of my colleague. So it creates really an environment where things move forward.
Yeah, and I think that's the misconception with politics, because it's become so polarized.
Oh, yeah.
That like, I think committee helps make a little bit of that neutral space. Like there's still conflict in committee, don't get me wrong. You're still going to see parties attacking each other, but there is that collaborative space. To your point, say like we've seen liberals and conservatives maybe pair on certain things because they're, open banking is an example of that. Critical mineral strategy, I haven't seen very much criticism around that because of how crucial they understand that is to their constituents. Or, you could even point to the Bloc and where they've partnered up. But it's an interesting dynamic to see that collaboration unfold with industry also kind of being there to either support or just provide more of a context.
And I think also people would be very surprised. And I think we know that because
we saw it
every day. But I think people would be very surprised the amount of motions in committee or the amount of work in committee that just get approved unanimously.
Yeah, that's true. We don't hear about
We don't hear about that. But I think people would be very surprised to see when members are studying a piece of legislation, they are sticky points because they will always be, but 80% of the rest of the legislation gets approved unanimously because it just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And so I think if people view that, I think people could have a different perspective of politics. It's not always confrontational. People do work together a lot on many issues.
Yeah, and that's why I'm doing this podcast. So one, have conversations with staffers, have conversations with everybody across the board, because I think we need to take that out. Like, I don't want to say take the politics out of politics, but I think there's an element to it, because I think politics has become such a dirty word.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be. Like, that's what upholds democracy, is talking to each other, disagreeing with each other. Yes, there's this whole machine behind this that's trying to separate us and create these echo chambers. But I think there's a beauty in the core of that democracy, of having that dialogue.
Yeah. I fully agree. And I think people have like you said, a bit of a bad perception of what politics is.
Yeah.
I think if people were just moving past it, sound bites, and actually just paying attention to what's happening on the Hill, people will have a little bit more faith about our political system. It works way better than what people think.
Yeah, way better. I would say it's a bit of a stretch.
Maybe that's a bit of a stretch.
I hear what you're saying. I think maybe the illusion of what they think it is to what the maybe actuality of it is. But I hear what you're saying.
I'm an optimist.
A glass
half full.
Yeah, I hear you. Vincent, we covered a lot.
Yeah.
We got philosophical and deep.
Yeah, at least we tried.
I think we got there. As we're wrapping up, what's the takeaway you want listeners to have from either this conversation or about government and how they see it, or how they see politics?
Yeah. I think overall, remembering that at the end of the day, government is here for you. And that Canadians are the only one who have a say in how they want their country to be run and to be governed. And don't be afraid to raise their hand, be involved, ask questions, because that's how you keep our democracy alive, and that's how you keep our system alive, by being involved.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic way to end it, and being engaged and holding the government accountable. Like, that is the beauty of democracy, is speaking out, questioning things, and coming at it from a lens of curiosity. So I think that's a fantastic way to end it. So thank you so much, Vincent.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, great.
Thanks.